That's a week in the future.
Huh? Oh.
Today's March 8th.
I am getting ahead of myself. I am sorry. JK, LOL. Okay, today's March 8th, everyone, not March 15th. Didn't mean to scare anyone for a moment there. So let's go ahead and do a mainnet check-in. See, the only item we have here is release 2.0.x with the safe restart and flash blocks.
I just copied this over from last week since because of the hotfix, we never got around to doing this release.
Yeah.
So I figured that we should just check in on that again.
There's very little movement on my end for this, for the reasons you just pointed out. We've been busy with higher priority things.
One thing from this list, maybe I want to highlight is the fixed microblock mining.
Yeah.
Have you looked at this?
Yes, I have. I can't reproduce the problem yet. I can make it so that I think I know what's wrong. I think there actually legitimately is a resource accounting bug in the way in which microblock mining was working that was causing the microblock miner to produce chains that were too long. But I do not know why. I do not yet know why the miner is confirming too long of a stream. I think it's actually this problem, but I haven't been able to reproduce it yet. I can just do it SPR if you want to take a look.
Yeah, if you can, either open a PR or just link the branch or something. I can take a look and try to reproduce it in a Neon integration test.
That's what I'm doing. I've already have 2 integration tests, and in neither case am I able to reproduce the problem.
Oh, okay.
But yes, that's generally the idea. Like, I'm trying to get this fixed as soon as we can so we can turn microblocks back on.
Gotcha.
Is the testnet in a state where we can reliably register BNS names and have the zone files propagate through the testnet?
No, last I was working on was deploying the Atlas the Atlas branch to the miner, which is all set, and to the BNS follower. But that follower was stalled. It was having issues syncing up with the network. And I think when Aaron tried to push a block to it, it would crash.
Leading us to do the hotfix release.
Yeah. So I'm not really sure what the next step is there. Is there like an updated version that needs to be deployed there to fix that crash? I'm not sure.
Well, at the very least, we need to get 2.0.8 shipped so that we can push blocks to the node without crashing it. I was able to duplicate the spin up problem locally on a testnet node. I think it actually stalled in the same place. I haven't looked at the logs yet. I just noticed that it had gotten stuck, and I intend to analyze that today. Hopefully that can lead to a fix so that we don't need to worry about pushing blocks to the node whenever we boot it up.
Okay. Gotcha. But if pushing blocks doesn't crash it anymore, sorry, not what?
Not in this version here, 2.0.8.
Okay. If the changes in 2.0.8 are in that Atlas branch, then I can create an updated tag, an updated Docker tag from that branch, and redeploy it to the BNS follower, and we could try pushing out the blocks again if it gets stalled. I'll do that today.
Yeah, I think that the version running actually has that fix. So yeah, so we should be able to push blocks to it now.
Okay.
Yeah, because it got updated from develop, I think, at some point.
Yeah, but like the Docker tag doesn't automatically generate. You have to run the Stacks blockchain GitHub workflow manually.
Yeah.
So if you did that manually, then yeah, that image was updated.
Yeah, I did that sometime last week.
Okay.
Should be updated.
Yeah, I can verify.
Cool.
Just remaining item here, we did update the README for the release cadence. I think we'll just try to stick to that as best we can. Is there anything more that we need to add to that README? Like once a month, low priority, medium priority, high priority, when to expect and what to expect in each of these things?
I would say that there's certainly things that we could add to that README, but for now, I think that
But we're in a good place right now.
we're in a good place. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
There's probably plenty of cleanup also just in general. Like while I was editing that README, there was like links to docs that kind of weird. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to definitely get the README in better shape. It's the first thing people see. Anything else on the mainnet check-in that we need to talk about? I think the network is running healthy. Last I checked last night. I haven't looked at it this morning yet though.
Yeah, it's so far been running very healthy.
Oh yeah, look at that. Almost no flash blocks. We have over 90% of blocks on the same fork.
Yeah. There was, I saw that you raised an issue last week in the mining channel about some miner getting up to like 10 blocks in length that they
Yes.
hadn't announced.
Let me find the example of that in the chain history, actually. I have an issue open for that. I think I know what's wrong. I just need to find a way to reproduce it.
Yeah, like is that the miner doesn't
So I think a combination of things have to happen. A miner has to win a block, and then it has to win the flash block that shows up right after it. And it has to win the flash block before it has a chance to propagate the block that it originally won.
Got it.
I think what happens is it loses the old block, and then it just keeps announcing new blocks. But as we can see here, it's the only one that has the missing flash block. This has happened twice so far. It's actually a pretty recent phenomenon. And it's the same miner who did it, and it's the same sequence of events.
Yeah. Is there an open issue for this?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
I don't have to show it. We'll get to it in the board. But yeah, there's an open issue.
Cool.
There might be, we might, depending on like how you want to do 2.0.x, like whatever the next release is going to be, we can either try to address that now, or we can try to push a new release out. I mean, up to you. Maybe we can discuss it in the time.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's run through the board. Alrighty, review in progress. More metrics. Welcome back, Jay Wiley. Do you have any more progress on the metrics PR?
No, not yet. Something I'm going to start picking up again, going through your comments and making the the needed changes there before I resubmit. I haven't looked at it in 2 weeks, but I've got some good notes that I'll be going through.
All right, cool. Looking forward. How is this doing right here? The V2POX endpoint update.
Yeah, so I think that it's just waiting on a second review mostly. Matt mentioned that because OpenAPI specs are pretty brittle, that we should add an action for validating the OpenAPI stuff and just pull it out of whatever the blockchain API is using for validation. That should be pretty easy. I poked around a little bit at doing that this morning, but I just had a question for Matt about, exactly how to do the validation.
This would just be part of our CI process, I guess.
Yeah, it would basically just be like another job in one of probably the big workflow. Like it can run in parallel. It's not even a Rust build, so it'd be pretty fast.
That's cool. Yeah, that'd be good to have. So that way we can detect breaking changes. I'm sorry, Aaron, do you have anything more to say on this?
No, that one is merged. I was just gonna say.
Oh, this one here?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. It's an issue. Just go ahead and close it then.
Yeah, so I guess we can say it's merged in developer or something.
Okay, so it'll imminently make its way into master. Fully support working dir to allow node reuse chain state. I've been using this pretty reliably in production so far. There's a PR for this. This is an issue. Is there like a PR somewhere?
I think it's merged.
Oh, great. Let's go ahead and close this. Very good. Alrighty. This is this merged yet?
Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah, it's merged. But I think we probably also skipped another one that was merged.
Up here?
Yeah.
Oh, let's do that in order then. Oh yeah. Very good. Same with this one. Assuming GitHub catches up to my mouse click.
Oh, that's a different one.
Oh,
this one's still in review. Yeah.
That's the the V2POX. I don't see the. I guess you just didn't tag the issue.
Yeah.
Awesome. Productive closing issues day. And then we have the TX sponsor PR here. I think we're still working through some feedback here.
Yeah, I just got a second round of reviews, so I've been adjusting that.
Alrighty, sounds good. I know that I've kind of dropped the ball this week. I'm looking at your other PRs. I'm trying to try to take a look this week, assuming we don't have another emergency hotfix to push out.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, keep up the good work. Mempool, collect metrics on transaction propagation. How are we doing on this, Aaron? Is this just, I think we talked about last time, it's gonna be a separate program that did this. Or is that something else? That was.
I think that was something else. I think that was like chain quality.
Yeah.
So the runtime TX log PR that was merged adds mempool metrics to Prometheus.
Sweet.
So we can mark this as closed.
All right. Cool. I'm still working on 1805. It's backlogged behind a bunch of higher priority things. Possible improvements to local reg test setup.
Yeah, I'm taking a look at this again today. I was hoping to spend more time on this last week, but got a bit sidetracked with some multi-sig Stacks.js work.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the surprising revelation there that the signing order is order dependent, not order independent.
The signing order. Oh no, that wasn't it. It was it had to do with compressed versus uncompressed keys.
Okay.
Yeah, Stacks.js just didn't have we weren't supporting uncompressed keys.
Gotcha.
So anyway, yeah, if anyone's curious, there's a PR up for that now.
That's good to know. We'll have your attention, Reed. Any movement on the decouple clarity VM issue we're tracking here?
Yeah, I made a little bit more progress with this last week, but nothing ready for review yet. I'm hoping to get that up sometime this week as well.
Alrighty, sounds good. See this new PR here manifested in review in progress. Okay. This is the Pavita, do you want to talk about this PR a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, basically I'm just adding an endpoint so that you can provide some contract information. It's like, yeah, so it can be identified, some trait information, so it can be identified. And then it will tell you whether or not that trait is implemented. the trait can be implemented either explicitly or implicitly, and the endpoint will check either. So
That's awesome. Yeah, it's going to be super helpful, especially if we have like a library of traits that people want to use. You need to look at examples. Cool. I'm going to take a look at this week too. I know this is something people have been asking about in like the SIPs chain, in the SIPs repository. New issues. I have a fix for this pushed. I haven't opened a PR yet, just because it's hard to, it's easy to verify that the problem is fixed from looking at the code, but it's hard to test it. I'm just gonna go and open the PR. We can talk about testing it later, I guess. All it means is that there's an error path that's leaking an event ID that's been plugged. It's a one-line fix. Aaron, this is the issue I was talking about earlier. Possible failure to propagate mine block if the subsequent block is a flash block. I did some sleuthing on this. Like these are the actual Bitcoin TX IDs. You want to take a look at them. But yeah, there's 2 data points is no longer a coincidence for me.
Yeah.
I noticed this when I was working on the mining code, fixing the microblock miner. We had this field in the miner payment schedule called burn chain sortition burn. It is not the, actually this is actually a bit misleading. This is the total burns for the previous block, not the current block. I don't think we use this field anywhere, thankfully. I'm afraid to change it though before 2.1.
Yes.
I think we originally tried to use it to like, when we were thinking about splitting the Coinbase between miners who support through user burn supporting. But I think it's just vestigial at this point. I say think because I actually don't, I'm really afraid to try to change it.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2.1. Appears to stall and boot up and develop. I did duplicate this problem locally. I think it actually stalled on the same reward cycle, which is a little bit suspicious. I have logs. I'll look through it today and try to figure out why. Miner produced 2% more transactions than blocks mined.
I'm not sure if there is a bug here or what the issue is. I try to get some more information, but I think it's safe to close this unless people can discern something that needs to be addressed here.
All right, do you want to go ahead and close it then?
Sure.
Yeah, since you're the one having the conversation there. Yeah, if I had to guess, like what I think is happening here is that I've noticed this as well. Occasionally your block commit can get bumped into the next block, maybe. So like you send more block commits than you actually log of mining them. I don't know.
Yeah, it might be like, yeah, there's like blocks where there are no valid commits, but there are a handful of commits in them. So it's like a flash block where people didn't RBF yet, like RBF quickly enough.
I have noticed that flash blocks, like even if you do manage to get a high fee transaction, and sometimes the flash block just didn't get your transaction for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Because I guess the miner had their own transactions they were working on. This is a linked pull request now. Cool. Pavitra, is this fixed in 2488?
Yeah, it is. I just put the fix in there.
Oh, awesome. Cool.
I also added this to the board just now. So.
Ah, great. Thanks. Yeah, cool. We'll get that closed out soon then. Oh wait, I didn't mean to close that. I meant to go actually right back to that. So what's the status of this PR, Pavitra?
I think I got one review from Matt. And I was gonna fix what he said like maybe today. So probably like waiting for a second review too.
Alrighty, cool. I'll show myself here as well. As long as we can get at least 2 people looking at this, should be good.
Should we start tagging all of the issues that are getting merged into next as stacks 2.1, just so that it's easier to create a change log at some point?
Yeah.
Probably for the best. This one is tagged as such, so.
Okay.
Think we might be at the end of the week.
Miner crashed.
Is this new?
It's
That
not
one-
new, but we can close it.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
that one should be fixed.
Yeah, I already even linked the issue. Sweet.
And then I opened a PR that I guess didn't show up in here, but
Okay, we'll just get straight to it. Oh, this one?
yeah.
I'll take a look at this as well. I also have fixed this in my uncommitted minor, microblock minor fix. I'll just, whichever one merges first, like we'll just deal with it, I guess.
Cool.
It's the same general idea. The only difference between your approach and my approach is I also include like a thread specific random hex string as well. So in case there are somehow two threads writing to it, you don't have a file system level clobber.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's probably a better approach then.
I also make it so we save the microblocks.
Yeah.
But yeah, so either way, all good. Cool. I think that's the end of this week's features. Let's look at the backlog. Atlas, I know that we're inching towards Ludo. I promise to get to it this week once we once you know I can have a chance to make sure that we can boot up the follower node on testnet. And Pascal, I don't think is here, so I don't think we can talk about this. That's closed. Cool. Alrighty, run to the board. Discussion topics. Release process recommendations. I think we copied this to the README already.
Yeah, I think some of these are, maybe most of these. I think the first two are probably addressed. I wanted to, I just wanted to start this thread so we can capture any other improvements around sort of release process and changelog and things like that we want to incorporate. So for this one, I think the two remaining things are, should we formalize some notion of a release candidate where if we tag a release candidate, we let it sort of run the testnet for a week or so as a criteria for pushing something onto the mainnet, especially for these releases where we want to establish a monthly cadence. We can create some predictability that way. And GitHub has a pre-release feature that's also well suited for this. Also makes it easier for other miners to try out release candidates without having to build from source necessarily. And then the other one that I wanted to discuss, which we've talked about briefly before, but we kind of need to just agree on whether it's something we're ready to implement, which is enforcing and adopting conventional commits for all commits in the repository. And then we can start to build automation around that to, automatically create and maintain changelog entries and other things down the road. But that would be a good sort of concrete first step.
I kind of feel like the rate at which we're shipping hotfixes is kind of high, though, for us to try to enforce a particular release cadence at this time. Do you feel like maybe we could think about this once we can go for like 2 weeks without doing a hotfix?
Sure. I mean, so for example, the version that's currently deployed on the testnet, there's no reason why we can't tag it as a release candidate, right? We've already deployed it on the testnet. But yeah, I don't think this is necessarily urgent, but I just wanted to make sure that there's a place for us to discuss and debate. So if people have feedback, please add, and also other ideas for improving the release process. I'll also collect some feedback from miners and other entities in the ecosystem to see, where the pain points are.
Mm-hmm. Can you have them post here? Like just so they can, yeah. I want to get these people in the habit of just talking to us. Like they shouldn't feel like they have to go through like one of us that will just be the representative or something like.
Oh, for sure. I think for some of these parties, like some of the exchanges in Asia, I think engaging on GitHub directly is just not in their DNA. So we can certainly try and nudge them towards it, and I will do so.
Sounds good. Yeah, otherwise it becomes like hard to understand how to prioritize which issues because it becomes a question of like he said, she said, and then things get lost in translation or lost in the relay. And also, I guess the other discussion item is 1 week from now, we should have a list of feature requests for 2.1. maybe I'll start a paper doc for this and we can just turn them into issues.
Yeah, I mean, we have some time today. Do we want to just go through? I don't know how exactly we'll do it. We have a lot of just open issues. So
I think the issues are probably too fine-grained for this and also just not complete.
yeah.
Like, we have a lot of stuff in the architecture meeting we talked about Friday, for example,
Mhm.
that's not covered in issues anywhere.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can, like, you're right, we do have some time. We have a lot of time, actually, like half an hour. Can we just open the architecture meeting?
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. So one thing maybe we just go through these in order and perhaps like tag them as something we should just create issues for. I think the two big things. So the first big thing here is like, there's definitely a few things that get block info could tell us that it does not tell us right now. Like given a block hash for a Bitcoin block or a Stacks block, what's the height? That could be something we do in 2.1. Before we, this might be something that we think about a bit more, because I don't know if we're going to have time to even do this adequately. Can we currently use Clarity to build a Bitcoin transaction parser or a Bitcoin Merkle proof checker? I suspect the answer is yes, but with difficulty. And it would be good to do a case study on how difficult, what those pain points are, because I think that would actually inform us like as to what features are missing in Clarity that we might consider shipping in 2.1. That might not happen before the 15th. One thing we did talk about here that I think is a really good idea is if we want to do something like change POX or change BNS or in general change a built-in smart contract. Aaron had this idea whereby we create a shell contract, which is just a contract that implements a function endpoint, but it has no function body. We just intercept the contract calls in this shell contract to actually do some native work. The thinking here is that we don't have to worry. This is a way to, sorry, I said this is a way to update POX. I misspoke. This is a way to add new keywords without worrying about risking clobbering existing keywords in existing contracts. For example, if you wanted to create a function called like BTC Merkle proof verify, if someone goes and deploys a smart contract that does that, like just before 2.1 goes live, then we're going to be in a world of pain because you can't have that function would then conflict with a built-in function name. So a way to work around that is we just add all new reserved keywords as functions inside of a shell contract. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Like this could, for example, might be how we do this, like parse Bitcoin transaction or verify Merkle proof.
Yeah.
Like other sorts of library type functions that we might want. Maybe there's a way to think about this for extending built-ins as well, like get block info. It might not be safe to try and add a new argument to get block info. Well, actually, that's a good question, because we actually have a couple PRs in flight right now that do this for Stacks transfer. If we change the argument signature, does that mean that we should try to create a shell contract to do it? Because those contracts will still parse and they'll just be invalid in 2.0.
Yeah, I think that it's probably fine to add an argument to a native function. But yeah, I think it requires a little bit more thought. But I think that the answer is yes, it's fine.
Okay. the similar shell contract concept might apply to things like updating existing contracts, but it would only be useful, we think, for adding new functions as opposed to changing existing functions. The thinking is that trying to replace code that's already deployed likely will break a lot of things in a lot of subtle, hard to reason about ways. And so we should probably just try to avoid it. Like if we wanted to change the way that POX worked, for example, suppose that we make stack stacks 2.1, that could be a wholly separate implementation of stack stacks. We would not want to try to replace the stack stacks function because again, that might really screw up something internally and we're just not sure how big that blast radius would be. Does that all make sense to people?
It makes sense to me, but again, I proposed this, so.
Yes. Yeah, reason we're thinking about this through is because one of the things that we will almost certainly want to do in 2.1 is we will want to change the way that reward addresses are acquired in POX. Namely, you should be able to continuously stack, i.e. you can stack your tokens again, like right before they unlock. And B, you should be able to increment the amount of tokens stacked by small amounts like 10,000 or whatever, instead of the 50,000. Both of these are challenging to implement because we can't just replace the contract code. We would likely need to make a extension function, like a wholly separate function that with a different name and everything that contains the new implementation of stack stacks. And we would need some way to ship that and activate it at just the right time in the code base. So like when block 700,000 comes along in the Bitcoin blockchain, we might have some code somewhere that triggers the instantiation of this new smart contract called POX extensions. And that might contain the new implementation of stack stacks. Following along?
And to be clear, we need to figure this out independent of stacks 2.1, right? If there is a hard fork at any point in time that requires an update to the boot contracts, we would need to have some approach. And so it's useful to try and think about it ahead of time if and when the need arises.
Speaking of which, one thing we should probably ship before 2.1, we could probably ship it actually at any point in time, but it's good to have most of the legwork done for this, is a soft fork signaling infrastructure. Like how do we get miners to agree to activate or change behaviors of the chain in band without requiring a huge breaking change that could really wreck everyone's day? The way in which we talk about this is largely described in SIP 11, but we have some legwork we can do. For example, one of the ways that this works in other chains is when miners mine a block and they want to implement a soft fork, they will set a bit in some scratch space in the block's header itself that indicates that, hey, if this bit is set, that means I'm signaling support for changing the validation behavior as follows. And then what that corresponds to inside the code is logic that looks to see how many other miners have set that bit and for how long. And if it's sufficiently long, then it means the network has sufficient support for the new behavior. And once that support threshold is met, the new behavior simply activates on its own. Like this is how Bitcoin did, like every single upgrade it ever did, including SegWit. It was setting some bits in the version field in the Bitcoin block. We have dedicated space in both the stacks block for doing this, as well as 5 extra bits we can use in the on Bitcoin block commit transaction we can use for this. And it shouldn't be too difficult to do some initial legwork to make it so that the chains coordinator can just read the memo bits and see which bits are set and then do a tabulation every reward cycle to see if any particular bits have been set by, say, 80% of all miners over the last reward cycle. Like once we can, like that right there is going to be required to do basically any type of in-band upgrade like this. The another set of tooling we should probably consider doing sooner rather than later, just at the rate at which we've been discovering things that we need to ship hot fixes for, is we should probably have some just built-in ways for miners to activate fail safes on their own. For example, miners might be able to say in their config file, I will not mine smart contracts, or I will not mine contract calls. Like I'm just going to wholesale disable them for the time being, in case we discover something really bad and we have to tell them like, hey guys, stop doing smart contracts for a little bit, lest you create a huge break in the system. Another thing we can do there, and this is also, again, how chains like Bitcoin do this, is we let miners pick a particular set of block hashes that either must occur in whatever chain that they're going to work on, or must never occur in whatever chain they're going to work on. This is, having the ability to do this would let us work around catastrophic failures. Like, for example, suppose that there's a bug discovered in the Clarity VM that under certain conditions would let people steal money out of a smart contract. You don't actually need to hard fork to fix this. All you would need to do is make sure that the minute that bug is materialized, miners have the option to just orphan the block in which it's materialized, in which case it just undoes that exploit. In the meantime, we ship an upgrade to the Clarity VM that simply prevents that from ever being executed. But giving miners the ability to immediately decide like which blocks are going to be orphaned just because they manifest a bad behavior, I think would be a great way to catching and putting out a fire like this should ever manifest. Because you don't want this to go on for like, hours or days at a time. You typically want to stop this immediately if you see this sort of thing. Like all of this, I think, can be done up front. This could probably be done before 2.1 ships.
Yeah. So one thing I would say is that about like 80% of the work of miners flipping that switch is already implemented in the miner, because that's how the miner behaves when they see a super expensive transaction.
Mm-hmm.
Like after they have a transaction that like fills the block, they drop that transaction from their mempool and then try to continue processing the mempool, but only looking for transfers.
Yep. So we could just extend that to do things like filter out whole types of contracts or contracts with certain properties.
Like the miner could just start in that state.
Yeah. This part's going to be a little bit more challenging, making it so miners can look at the ancestor blocks of the block of the chain that they're going to build on. Because wargaming this out in my head, the thing we'd really need to do is make it so that the miner code can automatically find the best chain tip to run given these constraints, and it can do that efficiently.
Yeah, Ludo, what were you about to say?
Yeah, I was wondering if in this case we wanted to drop the transactions or keep them in the mempool.
If the transactions are no longer valid, like suppose that miners decide to not mine smart contracts for the time being, leaving them in. I mean, leaving them in or leaving them out is really just a question of will they ever be processed again. The miner's not going to do anything with them either way.
Yeah, the other thing you would want to do is that you almost want like a soft fork check function in the block processor, so that as it's processing blocks, it passes the block to a soft fork checker.
Yep.
That checks whether or not it included any transactions that this node doesn't want to build on. And that way, nodes that are participating in a soft fork are able to only mine off of each other.
Yep. This is related to the concept of or related to the concept of deciding which blocks should be orphaned or included. The reason I think of this is Bitcoin in 2013 had a catastrophic problem like this, where somebody managed to mint 2 to the 63rd Bitcoins because there's an integer overflow bug. And the miners fixed it by just first of all, the chain advanced several blocks, for several hours, with some lucky person getting that many Bitcoins. And what miners did is they stopped mining on that chain. They started building a shorter chain off of the last block that it was mined before this bug manifested, and then just produced a longer chain over time that eventually orphaned the chain with that conflict in it. The software checker would be an ideal instrument for doing this. That would include doing things like looking at whether or not this block descends from the right ancestor or does not include the wrong ancestor, that sort of thing, especially if we're trying to recover. That might also tie into something like what's the longest chain tip. the longest valid chain tip. It turns out, I know that people talk about hard forks like they're no big deal, but in reality, you can get away with fixing most problems doing just soft forks. Because all you need to do, because most of the types of problems you would want to fix in a hard fork are problems that are really problems that get fixed by constraining behavior as opposed to adding new behaviors. If all you're doing is preventing certain states that were previously valid from ever being reached, then all you need to do is make sure that miners just choose to never mine transactions to reach those states. Soft forks can do that. Like, you don't need to do a hard fork to do that. The reason why that's a lot less risky, there's two reasons. First is the practical reason of, if you do a hard fork, you have to force the whole network. And I really do mean the whole network, like every user, every exchange, everyone running a node at home, they all have to upgrade by the hard fork date. And that's a pretty tall order. That's like upgrading TCP IP on the internet. It can be done, it has been done, but it's not something you ever want to do. The other question is more of like a legal and reputational problem. If we get into the habit of doing hard forks willy-nilly, then that kind of puts into question the whole reason why we have a blockchain at all, if we can just change the rules whenever we want. Making it so that miners at least have to participate in doing this upgrade by doing a soft fork, and making it so that users can individually choose what node version to run, significantly de-risks this problem, because we're not trampling on we're not like coercing them to upgrade. The soft fork only requires miners to upgrade. It doesn't require users to upgrade. Other things to think about for 2.1, I think. One thing that I've been trying to think about a way to do is, can we make it so that in the future, if we don't like something about stacking, can miners and stacks holders just vote on a new contract to replace the existing POX contract? I think that might be doable if we think about it, because all you would have to do is, it works similar to how like the cost voting would work. You would just have miners and stacks holders vote on what contract address is going to be the contract address that fulfills POX. And then all the special contract call handling code we use for POX would just use that contract. It would have to implement the POX trait or a POX interface for sure. But at least that would de-risk us from having to get everything perfect in 2.1 without having to try to do other sorts of network upgrades in the future. Like, we can do a lot of this, we can do in band. What do y'all think?
But that would still be tantamount to a hard fork, right? Even if miners could somehow vote for a new boot contract that replaces POX.
No, it's not a hard fork any more than a cost upgrade is a hard fork.
I see.
It's all in band, and it requires no action on anyone running a node. You can run an arbitrarily old version of the node and it will still update what it believes the POX contract to be, because the protocol has a way of expressing such things.
Yeah, I guess this is just a mechanism for adding more sort of like in-band variability to the POX contract.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you could imagine something like miners or users being able to vote on like the length of a reward cycle, which like changes the number of slots or something like that. There's like all sorts of things that could be tuned in band. But like if the contract itself still needed an upgrade, like it would have to be some out of band process.
Yeah, and go ahead, Walker.
Sorry, I was just saying, does the act of adding this capability, does that require a consensus breaking change? So that would be like, that's something that we would want to have in Stacks 2.1.
Yeah,
that's exactly. The way, there is currently no way to replace the POX contract short of doing a hard fork. We could make it so that miners and stacks holders can vote in band to replace it, and that change itself, adding that voting capability, would be a hard fork. But then all future changes to POX could be done that touch the contract and just the contract could be done through this in-band voting mechanism. Like no network-wide upgrade required.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a strictly positive thing to have, right? Like, what's the downside of? Is it like just complexity?
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna be true for anything we do, really. Complexity and time.
Yeah, I think it's complexity, and also it requires imagination. So like we have to know beforehand like exactly how we want the in-band tuning to work. Because I think like a wholesale replacement of a contract is like not something we could probably support in band, and probably shouldn't.
I agree.
Got it. So this
Yeah,
would
this
be
is
like,
not replacing anything. This is just deciding like, you know, what address to jump to when you when you want to do
yeah.
stack.
I mean, I guess like the cost voting stuff is a good analogy. There are some parameters that we want to be able to change, and figuring out what are those set of parameters and the design space that they create in the context of POX.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the more control over this sort of thing we cede to miners and users, like the more decentralized the project becomes. And what that would mean then is that it de-risks us choosing the wrong thing on behalf of the network. It also makes us, you know, less of a control point overall, which I think is also a good thing. Like we should all be replaceable.
We also did.
Go ahead.
So we also need to like design the governance of these updates, right?
Yeah, we would need to find out, we need to think about like who gets to vote, how long the vote lasts, what it means for a vote to be ratified. I'd imagine it's probably not going to be too different from the cost voting, just because I think it really needs to involve both the stacks holders as well as the miners. But of course, like we'll need to sit down and think about it. Just one final thing there that about 2.1 upgrades that we thought about so far. I just want to bring to y'all's attention. Reed brings up that this is a good opportunity to set the cost voting constants to be something a bit more fine-tuned, because we didn't really have a lot of time to do that in the 2.0 release. I know that we have a way to update cost voting in band. However, that is extremely expensive to do. And if people are not opposed, then we could just take the opportunity in 2.1 just to go ahead and make some better changes on our own. So this is where we are right now and figuring out going into 2.1. If there's any question, I think that we need to spend some time just turning these into issues, perhaps, and then from there we can figure out what will go into the 2.1 SIP, and then from there we're working around on it.
Can we use the discussions instead of issues?
Sure.
Yeah, I just think issues aren't a perfect fit for a lot of this, I think.
Yeah, that's all fine by me.
Cool.
When you go ahead and start the discussion, can you just put a link in here?
Sure.
Sounds good. Put that in discussions.
Do we have an opinion on supporting the ability to verify Schnorr signatures in Clarity? Like the Schnorr verify functions or something in this vein?
I would imagine that the way in which you would do this is you would implement the verification logic in Clarity itself, and then you would do the cost vote to make it so that the act of verifying the act of verifying a Schnorr signature is a lot less expensive once you have a native implementation.
But like it's a bit brutal to implement. Yeah. Isn't it a bit brutal to implement Schnorr verification signature in Clarity?
Sorry, what was that?
Isn't it a bit brutal to implement Schnorr signatures in Clarity? Like, it feels like a lot of work.
I guess I have two questions about this. Do we feel a pressing need to have Schnorr signatures as soon as the 2.1 upgrade? And if so, then maybe the next question would be like, can we go ahead and just add a native function for Schnorr signatures and put it inside of one of those shell contracts?
Okay. Yeah, I can try to make some progress on the need and try to come up with maybe, yeah, an example of what I have in mind.
Cool, cool. All right, we got 5 minutes left. Is there anything else for discussion?
Should we try to set up some sort of timeline for this next non-hotfix release? So assuming we don't have a hotfix situation, by when do we want to try and get this next release out? Because it does have a bunch of really important stuff in it, including re-enabling BNS and Atlas. So let's say we get the testnet deployment up and running. Like, is there what is the type of testing we need to do to be able to confident about the release itself? I'm guessing, you know, outside of some BNS specific testing, what other things do we want to see sort of happen on the testnet?
I would like to see performance analysis. I would like to see that even if we have 10,000 attachments, like what's the longest amount of time a network RPC will take to get the inventory for a list of attachments? Because if that starts growing to be more than like 100 milliseconds, then that's something we will need to address in the code before we can ship it.
Okay.
Because getting the inventory is a pretty IO heavy operation. I'm just concerned that that can start to take too long.
Can you add this as like a comment on the Atlas PR as like a requirement before merging?
Oh, it's already an issue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think the issue is something like we need to stream back inventory data as opposed to trying to get it all at once.
No, I just mean like what the rubric is for the performance analysis. Because like, I mean, performance analysis in general is always great to have, but
like what's our acceptance criteria, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And Ludo, you've already done a bunch of stress testing on test ground, right?
I haven't been using the test ground setup, but I've been using a local setup with a lot of transactions. But yeah, I haven't been like trying to extract response times. So that's something I can look into.
Do we have any other areas outside of Atlas where we suspect that, you know, for some type of workload, operations could take longer or at least grow unbounded? Like, are there any other areas like this? Because I feel like we haven't quite done this sort of analysis comprehensively, at least not to my knowledge. So I'm trying to see like if this is something that we are trying to introduce going forward for new things, or we're trying to go back and analyze for all existing things.
I can tell you right now, the block downloader has a constant time upper bound for how much IO it does per request or per pass of the inventory state machine. Like that was an intentional design decision.
Okay. All right.
This is just
but I don't believe that we have any performance regression testing though.
Yeah, that's true. It's all been ad hoc so far. Like this is getting slow, let's fix it.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, the question is going to become, I feel like the level of testing that has happened with Atlas now with Ludo's current PR is already far above, you know, what we had for Atlas when we did the mainnet launch. And, you know, let's say we do some analysis. I think at some point, like, you know, we'll have to figure out the trade-off between continuing to sort of leave Atlas disabled for, you know, a week longer, 2 weeks longer, a month longer, versus trying to, you know, get these numbers or get them down to some level. So trying to see like if the group has a sense of like where would we draw that line, and you know, what sort of performance numbers are sort of, you know, acceptable or sort of must have. Like, do we have a sense of that?
Well, I just wrote down a couple numbers right here. making sure that it doesn't, that Atlas inventory requests don't stall the network was a concern that I've had from the beginning. I think I can just add that, like if that would be helpful. I think I know how we can address this. And to answer the question, like the amount of testing is not the important part. The important part is how sure we're going to be it's not going to crash again.
Yeah, that's fair.
And like if we know there's ways that the network can grind to a halt, or possible ways for the network to grind to a halt, it's better to address them now than it is to address them after the network has ground to a halt.
Yeah. Do we have any Prometheus data on Atlas requests historically, or is that something that we have been capturing or not capturing either way?
I don't think that's something that we have. Jay Welly to confirm.
Are we capturing response time in general? Okay.
I think requesting.
Are we talking about the V1 Atlas?
No.
Okay. The only thing that we would have would be from Nginx. We could probably find something as far as response times if we have like a path we could use to look it up.
I mean,
you
these
talking
would
about
all
like
be post requests, right?
Yeah. Yeah, as long as we have a path that it's using, we would have it in Nginx. We don't have anything specific in the Stacks blockchain service though.
Okay, we're coming up on time here, so just to kind of move this forward, Ludo, like what is your sense of where we might be with these numbers and where do you need help?
So maybe as soon as this branch is deployed on testnet, I can run a stress test and we can maybe capture via this Nginx option the response time of the Atlas path.
Okay.
And we can take it from there.
All right, sounds good.
All right, cool. Is there anything else? I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
I may be incorrect about what I just said, Walker. The answer is really, it depends. If you can get us a path, we can look into it, but I can't guarantee we have data.
Yeah.
Depends on what the path and the URL is.
Yeah, we can get back to you with the path, but I think that ultimately this requires some changes to Stacks node. I think we've talked about this before, that we want to do sort of just put Prometheus monitoring around all operations. I don't know if there is a clean place in the code base that captures like all incoming requests, but if not, we can.
Yes and no. That's part of my PR that I'm working on right now, that I'm going to pick back up.
Okay.
Yeah, if there's a specific path that we want to track data, I can look to see if it's there. If not, I can add something in probably.
Yeah, I can also like maybe add a quick Prometheus integration for the RPC stuff in the Atlas PR, so that we can.
Yeah, I think that might be useful.
Yeah, if it's
All right.
if it's a higher priority, absolutely take it, Ludo, and I'll just copy and paste what you did into my PR for when it's ready.
All right, thanks all.
Sounds good. I'll go ahead and stop recording.